left to go in the game. The Pelicans are up by
1. Good morning, hello, and welcome everyone. Happy King Tides. My name is Erica Delamar. I am the Marine Protected Area Outreach and Education Project Coordinator for California State Parks, and I am so excited to welcome you all here today as we embark on our 6th annual King Tides event in partnership with the California Coastal Commission. So today we are going to be having an awesome adventure. We are going to be exploring the California coastline, looking at these high tide events along the entire California coast. And we're going to be stopping in at a lot of different California state parks, but we're also going to be speaking with experts along the way to learn about king tides, about sea level rise, and about different things that we can do to help protect our global ocean. So we'll be speaking with a professional from UC Climate Stewards. We're going to be talking to someone from the California Coastal Commission, as well as the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I hope you guys are excited because we're going to have a great time today. Now, to start off with though, it's really important to understand what are king tides. Why is this a big deal? Why does California State Parks do this every single year? That's a really great question, but let's break it down. What is a king tide? Well, first we need to understand what a tide is. Number one, our tides are those regular, very natural, high and low level water marks that happen throughout the day, every week, every month of the year. Now, every so often though, we get something special occurring, and it's caused by the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon. Now, the sun and the moon, throughout the month, they are pulling our tides and our global ocean and creating those highs and lows. But every so often, when the Earth and the moon and the sun line up, as you can see on that diagram on screen, the moon and the sun, their combined gravitational pull creates these really extreme high and low tide events that we call king tides. This season, this winter season in California, it happens twice. Once is happening this weekend, tomorrow, December 4th and 5th, and then again in January, on January 2nd and 3rd. And these high tides events are really exciting because essentially what they do is they give us a glimpse into the future. We actually get to do a little bit of time travel today. Thanks for showing that diagram. We can take that one off screen now. So what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be doing a bit of exploration and learning about how the king tides, these extreme high water events, give us a glimpse into our future. Now, to talk about the relation between king tides and sea level rise, I've invited a friend here with me today. This is my friend and colleague, Sarah Mae Nelson from UC Climate Stewards, and she's going to break it down a little bit more for us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Erica. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be joining you from Point Lobos Natural Reserve today. And you can see behind me what this really high tide water line is looking like. Now, if we can bring up on the screen a photo of something that's really awesome that we have just north of us in San Francisco, that is the Tide Station 9414290. Now, why is this special? Well, for 170 years almost, this station, since June 30th, 1854, has been measuring the level of the tides. It's the second longest data record in the entire world. And this is what gives us information about how our tide levels are changing and actually how sea levels are rising. So we can pull that photo down now. Now, why are we talking about sea level rise now? Well, it turns out that our planet has this really awesome system to keep us warm, to keep the temperature stable, and that is the heat trapping blanket. It's the atmosphere that surrounds the Earth. We can bring up that other diagram to show us a little bit of what it looks like. So the heat trapping gases in our atmosphere, like carbon dioxide and methane, those are transparent to incoming sunlight. But when those sunlight hits the Earth, the dark places on the land and like the water you see behind me, it absorbs that incoming sunlight and it turns it into heat energy. Energy is super awesome and can turn into different kinds of chemical energy, light energy, heat energy over time. And what that does is it actually absorbs some of it into the water And that is part of why our sea levels are rising. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it also lets go of some of that heat energy and it comes back out into the atmosphere, out into the air, and it gets trapped by this heat trapping blanket effect, like you can see bouncing around in the atmosphere in our diagram there. But it turns out those heat trapping gases are not transparent to heat energy. Instead, it traps it close to the earth and is what keeps our temperature stable and able for our community of life living here to have everything that we do. The oceans make life possible here on planet Earth. But it turns out that human beings, we do a lot of different things. One of the things that we do is we burn fossil fuels like coal, gasoline, methane gas for energy and transportation. And when we do that, we release a waste product, carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere. And the more of these fossil fuels that we burn, the more carbon dioxide is ending up in our atmosphere, increasing that heat trapping blanket effect around the world. Now, what does the mean of the increasing heat trapping blanket effect? Well, we have a cartoon to kind of introduce you to what that might mean, but it means that temperatures around the world are getting a little too high. Our air temperatures are getting a little too warm. Our ocean temperatures are getting a little too warm. And that means that the ice on the land, like glaciers and ice sheets at Greenland and Antarctica, those ice sheets are starting to melt. And as that meltwater makes its way down into the ocean basins, it's actually increasing the volume of water in the ocean. And that means more water in the oceans, higher sea level. So today, we are seeing, as Erica said, a glimpse into the future. This is a high tide today, but if we don't make choices to reduce how we burn fossil fuels right now, and there's lots of opportunities out there, this could be sea level in the future. Now, keep in mind, we would still have king tides in the future as well. So this might be regular sea level, but then we'd have even more tidal change on top of that. And this is a big deal for people who live along the coast, for people, not just people, the animals that live here. You can see some of the birds in the background, some of maybe the seals hanging out there on the rocks. So we as human beings have a lot of choices that we can make that directly affect our oceans. Now remember, the king tides are an example of what could happen. We have a lot of opportunity to make a lot of choices. And today, as we look up and down the coast, as Erica shared, and we experience these different places, we can see what we have the opportunity to protect, the people and places and animals that are important to us, and maybe make a little bit of different choices for our communities and our ecosystems. So I'm going to hand it back over to Erica to start our tour up and down the coast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah Mae. That was a really great breakdown of how climate change is connected to sea level rise. Now, again, just as a reminder, king tides, they are naturally occurring events. It's just that high tide and those low tides. Really great opportunity to tide pool this weekend if you're interested. But again, we get to time travel today and we are looking into the future, and that's what we're going to be checking out along the coast. To begin with, we are going to start in the far southern part of California, Tijuana Estuary Natural Reserve. This is down along the border of Mexico. So if we can switch over and say hello to my colleague, Anne Marie, she should be down there and ready to say hello to us. All right, there is Anne Marie.
Hi.
Hi, Anne Marie.
Sorry, my internet goes in and out.
You're all good. We're so happy to have you here. And it looks like you are standing next to a very flooded estuary right now. How are things looking there today?
It's looking pretty high. Actually, it's a 6.9 today. Tomorrow's going to be 7.6. So I think the water might even be a higher level. Sometimes king tides are such that you can't see any vegetation at all. So this is pretty good.
Yeah, this is
It can be
definitely
even
the start
higher.
of this is the start of the king tides, right? So tomorrow, the
Yes.
4th and the 5th, is when we're going to see those really high level marks. Well, I'm going to
Exactly.
hand it over to you, Anne-Marie. Let's hear about what's going on at Tijuana Estuary.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody to the Tijuana River National Estuarine Research Reserve. I'm Anne-Marie Tipton. I'm the education coordinator, and I do work for state parks. This is a state and federal partnership with the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration and California State Parks. So being that we're a reserve, what's really neat about us is that we collect data all the time, 24/7. And we call it the system-wide monitoring program. And the way we do that, the reason why we do that is to really take the temperature of the reserve at all times. We also have a weather station. And if you could pull up the data logger image, that'd be awesome. That's where I am right now in the low tide. So you can see what it looks like without a lot of water. The one with the data logger, the other one with, there we go. Thank you. So that's Michelle. She was our research associate, and she's maintaining the system of the data logger. Underneath the ground, there's a pole there that has an antenna. So it's a real-time station. And if you want to go to the real-time station, you go to nersdata.org/mobile. So if you miss the Tijuana Estuary, go back to this next slide, please. And if you want to see what the data is like. So what's really interesting is we collect this data all the time, and it's part of what's called the Sentinel Site program. The Sentinel Site program is a climate change program where we
All right, it looks like Anne-Marie's internet may be breaking in and out a little bit, so we might need to come back to her in a moment. We'll see if we can get our producer, our man behind the curtain, Brad Cray, is helping coordinate our statewide effort. So Anne-Marie down in Tijuana Estuary, we'll be coming back to you in just a moment. Let's cruise a little bit further up the coastline, also in San Diego County. We have our colleague Sandy at San Olejo State Beach. She's in the northern part of the county. And maybe Sandy is ready to speak to us and say hello and give us a view of what high tide is looking like at her park. Hi, Sandy. How's it going out there?
Good morning, everyone. We are here at San Olejo, and just as Anne-Marie said, we have a pretty high tide here. It's at the 7:30 this morning, it was almost 7 feet. It's kind of going out, so you're not even seeing it at its height. But it's definitely here.
Yeah, we can see the rocks along the edge there where it was a little higher earlier on. And, you know, we're expecting too this weekend, everywhere along the California shoreline, tomorrow and Sunday, we've got our king tides rolling in. So really great opportunities to be seeing these really high water and low water events. So Sandy, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the impacts of sea level rise there at San Olejo State Beach?
Okay, so just wanted to tell you again that I am Sandy, and I'm an interpreter here at San Olejo. We're located in northern San Diego County, just north of Tijuana Estuary. And, you know, we're talking about king tides today. Secretary Crowfoot has said that they are the harbinger of things to come, and I love that. You know, if you joined us last year, you know that you would have heard a tale of 2 campsites. And unfortunately, we have been affected here by climate change and the results of the king tides and the extreme storms, and that we lost 2 beachfront campsites. And that meant up to 2,000 visitors a year will no longer have access to recreate here at our state park, and that is a loss for humans especially. And I wanted to tell you, just recently, this week in fact, we have lost 2 sections out of a trail that was used nearly every day. So I wanted you to look over here, and you're going to be able to see in just a minute an area that along the fence here, and right on the other side, on the ocean side of the fence, is a trail. And it doesn't look like it is, there's any problems with it now, but on the other side of the bushes, there are 2 sections that have collapsed. And I think Brad may have a picture of that for us. And you can see it's just dropped out, that erosion, that churning, that higher tides and those storms have caused over the years. And that's another bit of loss of access for humans. So we're going to come back here and check out the high tide again. And, you know, climate change has affected our park in many ways. We have a brand new Lifeguard Headquarters, and that is up here. We're going to show you that right now, and you're going to be able to see that beautiful building. It took years of planning and research and then building, but you can see where it's located. It's not located down on the beach, right? It was strategically located up high at one of the highest points here because taking into account those future high tides. Finally, right behind me, as Erica and I were already showing you, we have almost 7 feet of water, and we're not even down as low as we were yesterday when we were practicing for our program. But that water was all the way up against our bluffs here. And in fact, even this morning, we lost just a little bit more of the bluff. This area is so fragile and it's so stable. And these higher tides are really, really doing some damage here. And you can't see it, but there's a whole section that's been eroded away. And as soon as that bottom part of the cliff erodes, the top part will not be too far to collapse. So, and we always are telling folks, stay off the bluffs. Super important to remember that. So that's kind of what's happening here at San Olejo on our King Tides program.
Very good, Sandy. Yeah, I know that the bluffs along San Olejo State Beach are not uncommon. We see a lot of bluffs like that. Oh, and that's a big wave coming in. I could hear
right
that
there.
one. So those bluffs along the Southern California coast.
Look at this one. Look at this one. Woo! Definitely. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That was a really big wave. Yeah, and that goes to show, right, with these king tides, we're getting these high water events. And with sea level rise, as Sarah May explained earlier, sea level rise is just bumping up the level of the ocean. So when you get these high water events, that water is coming in even higher, and it's allowing for the erosion of those bluffs that we see in Southern California, as well as, you know, looking at the impacts of losing parts of our campgrounds. That is certainly significant, especially for those of us who love to camp. I love getting out into my state parks and getting outdoors. So Sandy, thank you so much for giving us a quick view of San Olejo. I know that we're going to be checking back in at your site later on. Stay safe with those waves though, Sandy. Those ones are big. Again, hi everyone. I'm Erica with the Interpretation and Education Division with California State Parks. We are celebrating California King Tides, and we are exploring the entire California coast today as we're looking at these different high water events. I'm here at Point Lobos State Natural Reserve at the dive ramp. This is where scuba divers enter the water, and we are seeing waves start to wash up into the parking lot where I am right now. So we're seeing them start to come in a little bit, which is pretty incredible. All right, we are going to just quickly check back and see, is Anne Marie available to chat with us again and finish up her portion down from Tijuana Estuary? Let's see if she comes on. All right, we might be moving on up the coast then. So we are going to head further north. So we stopped into San Diego County. We are going to go into Orange County, and there she is, Alex Anderson. Hello.
Hello.
Alex, you're there at Crystal Cove, and how are things looking today at Crystal Cove?
Yeah, so hello everybody, my name is Alex and I'm an NPA interpreter here at beautiful Crystal Cove State Park down in Southern California in Orange County. And today we're bringing you down to the coastline to show you one of the most extreme tides of the year called a king tide. So this is the 6th year in a row that California State Parks has partnered with the California Coastal Commission's King Tides project, so that we can visualize the future and what sea level rise might mean for our coastline. So we're going to show you right behind me today what's happening. So first of all, what is a king tide? So tides are caused by the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun on the earth, but mainly the moon, because the moon is a lot closer to the earth than the sun. And once or twice a year in the winter time, the sun, the moon, and the earth are in complete alignment. And that gives us these extreme high tides. So I want to just step out of the frame here and show you what it looks like here. And you may notice these cottages on the sand here. Look how close the water is reaching up towards those structures. There's rich history here and within the coastal bluffs in the park. This is the Historic District, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. There are 46 unique historic cottages of vernacular architecture, meaning structures without specific design. They were built in the 1920s and 1930s, preserved, historically refurnished, and are now rented out through California state parks as campsites. These cottages represent a place and time in early 20th century California. And the Historic District is just one of many California cultural resources that may be compromised due to sea level rise and coastal erosion in the future. Brad, would you mind showing an image of the same location but at low tide? Yeah, so you can see that dramatic change right there. And notice the coastal bluffs, the beautiful coastal bluffs in the background. So the waters and lands of Crystal Cove State Park are the ancestral homeland of the Ahashiman and Tongva tribal nations, and there are actually sacred places in those bluffs, and those could be compromised as well due to sea level rise. Thank you, Brad. We can go back to the ocean shot. So sea level rise is caused by the expansion of warming waters and the melting of glaciers and ice sheets due to global warming. And the sea level rise combined with extreme high tides and wave action from strong storms can cause coastal erosion. And that's chipping away at the California coastline. It's estimated that we could lose 2/3 of our beaches in Southern California by the end of the century. And with the beaches, we could lose our coastal cultural treasures. And we have a special guest with us today here. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Crystal Cove Historic District. My name is John Adamson, and I have lived here from 1980 to 2001. I also work here for the Crystal Cove Conservancy, which is the non-profit arm that manages the cottages here. When Alex asked me to do this, I had to say to myself, well, I haven't really noticed any change here, but that is not true, because I opened up our family album, which covers 82 years of our cottage. My wife's family had a cottage here from 1939, and it was positive proof how the coastline had changed, how the bluff have changed, and also how the beach was lower. You look today, as Alex showed you, and the waves are coming much higher up. It was only maybe 20 years ago that when we left, that there really wasn't that much to see. But now the waves go right away up to our cottage, which was one of the lowest ones, number 7. And these photographs in the family album showed it very distinctly that the rise of water is there. It's positive. It's happening. So back to you, Alex. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, John. John is still an active part of the community here at Crystal Cove. He's also a volunteer and educates people about tide pool ecology. So we love having him here. And just these images of the structures so close to the coastline, they're really telling. Thank you so much, guys. I think we're gonna hop up the coast.
Yeah, Alex, that was a really great look. And it's so important to have those historic perspectives. John, having spent many years actually living in one of those historic cottages on the beach there at Crystal Cove State Park. What an amazing experience. Hi, John.
Hi.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, because that is a perspective that not many Californians have, to get to see that changing coastline over many, many years. And amazing that you can look back at your own family's record of your own photos and see how the beach has gotten more narrow and how the bluffs have changed. I know that with those cultural resources, those beautiful historic cottages along Crystal Cove, it will only be a matter of time before sea level rise will potentially be impacting those beautiful old historic structures. So thank you both so much for sharing your little section of the coastline. It's been great checking in with you. See you later on. Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks. So we are going to try one more time to check back with Anne-Marie, who is at Tijuana Estuary National Reserve.
Hello.
Anne-Marie, it sounds like we're reconnected. Sorry you got cut off earlier. Take it away.
Oh, thank you so much. So Brad, why don't you go ahead and put up the graph image? That'd be awesome with the photo and the graph. And we'll talk about our data that we use. And there we go. Awesome. So this is a screen grab of our one of our website. It's part of our website. This is a photo. We have a webcam at Boca Rio, we call it, which is the mouth of the river. And then we also, here's also below it is tide data from a high tide around November 22nd. And what you could see, it has two different lines. It has the one line is the line from Scripps Pier. That's the one that's blue. And then the green line is from Oneonta Slough, which is right where I am. And you could see that the tide data isn't exactly the same, that the Oneonta Slough is not, the low tides are not as deep. And the reason why the low tides aren't as deep is because that we have very, very shallow channels that are only like 3 to 6 feet deep. So this is just another example how we are collecting data all the time. We have data available for students, for teachers, for scientists, and it's a way to really, because what is climate change? Climate change is trends over time, right? So we could see if the sea level rise is rising in this area, and by collecting this data all the time. And it's really neat that this data is available online. NERS data, NERSDATA.org/mobile is the real-time data that you could pull up. So I think that's what's really neat about being a National Estuarine Research Reserve. We have this data available for educational and research purposes. And it's also a way with the Sentinel Site program to really help work with the city of Imperial Beach and the city of San Diego to help mitigate any potential impacts from sea level rise. And so that's pretty much it. And I wanted to thank everybody for your patience, for our connectivity. But it's a really neat place here. And I sat at this place because right here is a apartment. So you can see we're the reserve and the salt marsh is just right at an urban interface. So what do marshes do? They help with flooding and buffering storms. So it's kind of a natural filter. But if we have like what Sarah May was talking about, if we have these tides that are just always high, then that's going to definitely be an issue. And Imperial Beach knows that they might be underwater, and they're working on trying to find out ways to get funding to mitigate that.
Yeah, that's really awesome to see, Anne-Marie. And that's not only the case down in San Diego County. Along the entire California coast, we have a lot of communities that are built right up against the coastline and also right up against estuaries. And our estuaries and wetland, they are really great buffers for those storm surges, for king tides, to allow those higher water levels to come in. But when the development goes right up against the edge of those estuaries, all that concrete and asphalt and steel that we put in obviously limits the ability of the estuary to do that good work for us, right?
Mm-hmm, totally.
Well, thank you so much for letting us have a really great look at Tijuana Estuary Natural Reserve. We are going to now check in with Annie Frankel from the California Coastal Commission, and she is going to share with us some information about the California King Tides project. Good morning, Annie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great.
Awesome. Take it away.
So thank you to the viewers for joining this morning. And I do want to say a huge thank you to California State Parks and their staff for giving us a glimpse of what the king tides look like up and down the coast. Now, I want to invite you to join the California King Tides project this weekend. This project is part of an international effort to photograph the king tides. You don't need any special expertise. You just need to be able to get to a tidally influenced shoreline during high tide and be able to safely take a photo. Then you can upload your photo to our website, where it will become important data for scientists, planners, communicators, and anyone who wants to learn about the king tides and the impacts of sea level rise. And that's one of the main reasons for this project. Since king tides are 1 to 2 feet higher than the average tide we see throughout the year, They're an effective way to help us visualize the sea level rise we'll see in the next few decades. During king tides, if a beach is covered in water, if a road floods, if shore animals are disturbed, you can think about what it will be like when the water is at least that high every single day. The data you collect with your king tides photos helps us responsibly plan for sea level rise. It also helps all of us to think about the impacts of climate change and how we can act to protect the people and the places that we love. It gives us a reason to visit and observe the coast, and it gives us a reason to talk about climate change and sea level rise with our friends and family. Sea level rise is happening, and it's going to continue to happen in the future because of all the fossil fuels that we've extracted and burned over the last 200 plus years. But the amount of sea level rise that we ultimately experience depends on how quickly we stop burning those fossil fuels like oil, gas, and coal. So there are people all over California and the world working on that and working to plan for what's coming. You can help by talking about climate change with everyone you know, by getting involved in your community and local government, and by contributing your photos to the California King Tides Project. So again, King Tides are this weekend, this Saturday and Sunday, and they're also the first 3 days of January. We would love your help on any of those days. Just go to the website, california.kingtides.net, to find out what time high tide is near you, to find out how to upload your photos, and it's really easy to do, and to explore all the King Tides photos that people just like you have contributed over the years. Thank you.
That was an awesome little introduction to the California King Tides Project. So if you have a smartphone or a tablet or a regular camera, you can go out to your local coastline. For me, it's here at Point Lobos State Natural Reserve, and take pictures at those high water marks and contribute them to that really important statewide community science program. Okay, well, up next, we are going to move further up the coastline. We have already seen San Diego County, Orange County, and now we are down along the Channel Coast at Gabiota State Park. I see my friend Parker there. Hello.
Hello, good
How's everything
morning.
looking there at Gabiota, Parker?
It is looking pretty good this morning. Got some tides coming in, lots of birds hanging out on the pier right behind me this morning and flying around, so it is pretty awesome out.
Very good. And I can see the rack line, or all of the seaweed and kelp that has washed up along your shoreline there. And that's a really great marker for understanding where the high tide has been. And I know that we're joining you just a little bit after your peak high tide, but I know that this weekend, the king tides are coming for us this Saturday and Sunday. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Go ahead and share with us what's happening at Gabiota State Park.
Awesome, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and my name is Parker, and I am coming to all of you today from the beautiful Gabiota State Park, and we are located in Santa Barbara County, about 30 miles to the west of Santa Barbara, California. So, today we got a great lens into our King Tides event. Also provides us a lens into the future of what high tide and sea level rise will look like here. And you can actually see behind me, we have our high tide line, and you can, as Erica mentioned, you can see the rack, all of that kelp that's kind of lined up there. And that's kind of where the high tide came in. It's approximately about 10 feet behind where we are standing right now. And so, and that's it of our beach here. We only have about 10 feet of that sandy area. Really want you to think about that. And this here is actually an image of what it looks like from Gabiota State Park at a low tide event. So in comparison with what we're seeing right now versus low tide, like this afternoon, yesterday we had a school group out here along the coast, and we were able to go tide pulling up and down our coastal bluffs. But unfortunately, when we have events like this, we wouldn't be able to access these regions. So kind of like right about, let's see where my hand is here, is where you'd be able to go on a low tide event. But you can really see how these king tides are really impacting coastal access for recreational opportunities, sort of like tide pooling or exploring the coastline, even opportunities to go to our beaches. And this area we're in is actually quite even with our parking lot. So occasionally high events or rain events, flooding will occur in our park and our campground. And that is one of the main reasons why our campground here at Gabiota State Park is closed during this time of year, because of it's in the low-lying area within our watershed. So, but that's a little bit about us here at Gabiota State Park today. It's a full day, and I'm looking forward to checking it out, the rest of the coastline with you all.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Parker. Now, there at Gabiota, you've got a nice stretch of sandy beach with rocks on either side of it. It's kind of a narrower beach. I'm here at Point Lobos, and you'll notice we've got a lot of rocks. These are all what we call riprap, and the coastline's really built up. And we usually have what's called a little pocket beach back here in this area right behind me. And that pocket beach is really important for harbor seals for hauling out on. They really like the sand, like what you've got there in Gabiota. And just a moment ago, while you were speaking, we had a harbor seal show up right here behind me, right near the dive ramp. And I bet you that this harbor seal is looking for its little sandy beach. And because of this high water event, the sand is gone. It's underwater. So that marine mammal does not have the ability to come out and haul out and have a rest and warm up in the air. So that is a really big difference and contrast between the sandy beaches that we see down south, which under high water events, they do disappear. And then in other parts of the coast, like here on the Central Coast, more rocky shorelines. Anyway, really good seeing you, Parker. Thank you so much for sharing Gabiota with us. And we're gonna just continue to cruise up the coastline. So we are going to be heading north in just a minute, but we're gonna take a quick video break. We've got something we wanted to share with you all. So these videos that we've been sharing are pretty funny, but the fact of the matter is the ocean is moving in. And Carissa, there you are. So we are visiting Carissa in Morro Bay State Park, and it looks like the ocean is moving in where you are right now, and it might be moving up a trail. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly, Erica. So I'm here in beautiful Morro Bay State Park, and as you can see, we're in our Windy Cove parking lot right now, and I am almost getting surrounded by water. Here, I'm going to take you guys on a little walk, and we can see this hiking trail right here. We've been watching it over the last 30 minutes or so, start from back behind that trash can to moving all the way up our trail. So in this king tide event, we often see this parking lot completely covered with water, especially if we have a storm surge. Then everything from this parking lot up until this state park road behind me can get covered with water. So with these sea level rising, as we've mentioned before, this king tide event of today could be our high tides of the future. So if this is our normal high tide, then we might not have access to our Windy Cove parking lot, which is a really common recreation spot. People like to launch paddleboards and kayaks. We just saw someone go out about 10 minutes ago. And if we then have a king tide from this point, then everything from this parking lot to our state park road that gets you to our campgrounds, our Museum of Natural History might be covered and inaccessible. So what else do king tides affect? They affect our habitat. So right here, I am in the cove, and this is the Morro Bay Estuary. What is an estuary? An estuary is where freshwater and seawater meet. They're also commonly referred to as nurseries of the sea because they're such an important spot for spawning fish and birds. And here at Morrow Bay, we have lots and lots of species of migratory birds that stop in Morro Bay to rest and feed, and the estuary is an essential part for their migration path. And as sea level rise, we're seeing a higher level of salinity come into the estuary. So we're having more salt, which affects the marshland habitat, which then has the trickle-down effect to the birds and fish and all other marine organisms in this area. So the king tides can affect our infrastructure, our recreation, and habitat, and sea level rise will just make those worse and worse. But those are all above ground. So what happens under the surface? So here in Morrow Bay, we have an unincorporated community called Los Osos just to our south, and that community serves about 16,000 people, and right now they're seeing seawater intrusion. So what is seawater intrusion? That is when salt water increasingly affects the underground water basin. So in Los Osos, they have one aquifer that they rely on for all their drinking water and water for showering and cooking and all that. And right now we're seeing more and more salt water. They've had 2 different wells that have had to get shut down due to this contamination. And as sea levels rise, then this is just going to be more and more of a problem. And not only for our little community here on the Central Coast, but we're seeing this happen all throughout California and the West Coast. So don't forget to snap your photos of king tide. And Brad, if you could show us that low tide photo real quick. So as you can see, this is what our low tide looks like. We have this piling behind me, and then that's also in that photo, if you can see. So that huge drop is what we've been seeing in our estuary every day for about a week now as we get closer and closer to king tides. And this weekend, it'll be even more extreme. So keep an eye out for those and snap those photos of your coast. Thanks, everybody.
Wow, awesome, Carissa. Thank you so much for giving us a look there at the shoreline of Morro Bay. And that's such a great reminder with water intrusion. You're seeing these waves wash up here behind me. These are coming up into the parking lot here at Point Lobos. So I feel you have a trail there that is flooded. So it definitely does impact our use of our parks when we're not able to access parking lots or not able to access trails because of that flooding. That's a really great reminder. I also really want to thank you for sharing the story about saltwater intrusion in your aquifers. I lived and worked overseas for quite a few years, and I lived on a small island in Indonesia where sea level rise is very much impacting the local community there. I was on a small little island called Nusa Lembongan, and our fresh water was fully intruded. You could not get fresh water out of the taps in any of our houses or buildings. When you turned on the tap, it was salt water coming out of it because of saltwater intrusion from sea level rise. And it's not an enjoyable thing to have showers in salt water, to brush your teeth in salt water. So we had to use a lot of fresh water that was imported from other islands that had those higher levels of rainfall and higher aquifers that we could tap into their their fresh water. So it is something real. We may not be fully experiencing it in all of the communities in California, but it is happening. So thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, thanks, Erica.
You're welcome, Carissa. We will be speaking with you soon. So now we are going to welcome my colleague, Sarah May from UC Climate Stewards back. She's here with me in Point Lobos. Welcome, Sarah May. And you're going to share a little bit more with us about the links between sea level rise and climate change. So,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks. So a little bit earlier, we were talking about how the heat trapping blanket effect as a result of increasing carbon dioxide for humans burning fossil fuels is causing the air around the world to warm up, and it's also causing our oceans to warm up. It's causing ice to melt and increasing the volume of water in our oceans, making sea levels rise. But that's not the only way that sea levels rise. There are 2 other ways. One is when the land moves, as changes in elevation happen because of removing water from aquifers that can sink and cause saltwater intrusion, as we were just talking about in the Los Osos community. But also land is sometimes rising in certain places. as a result of tectonic plate activity from earthquakes and different things. But the really cool thing that I want to talk to you about that's also related to temperature in the ocean is something we call thermal expansion. Now, the word thermal just has to do with temperature, and it has to do with what cold water does versus what warm water does. So depending where you are on the coast today, it might be a little chilly. Right now, it's about 50-something degrees here in Point Lobos, California. And I'm a little cold, so I'm kind of staying together. My arms are close to my body. I'm not moving around too much. And that's the same thing that water does. When water molecules are cold, it kind of stays in one place. It doesn't move around very much. But as water warms up, as it absorbs that heat energy, it starts moving around a lot more, taking up more space. You can kind of think of it a little bit like dancers. If a slow song is playing, they're not moving very much. But as more energy gets into that song, they start moving around a lot more and taking up a lot more space. So not only is more water entering our oceans from land-based ice melt, but the water is actually taking up more space as it gets warmer and warmer. So we've been seeing the tide creep up the ramp here where the scuba divers enter the ocean, as Erica has been sharing. And, you know, if you kind of think about it, I'm almost 6 feet tall. And if I walked over here to our ramp, you could see that my height would actually be what a king tide might be like on a sea level rise of this height in the next couple of decades if we continue to burn fossil fuels as we have been for the last 100 years or so, as Annie was mentioning. But we have a lot of choices that we can do related to our use of fossil fuels, increasing that heat trapping blanket effect because of the carbon dioxide pollution that's entering our atmosphere. And so sea levels don't have to rise that much if we make choices to take action about climate. Now, the great thing that we've been able to see so far down at Tijuana River and also at Morro Bay as well, we got to see the wetlands, and the wetlands and the estuaries protect us so much from the impacts of climate change. Now, we've got a photo here, Brad, if you could bring that up, of Elkhorn Slough. And Elkhorn Slough is just north of us near Watsonville, California. And if you look at it, you can see how much it spreads out, and that really cool vegetation that's there actually helps the water spread out. And it acts a little bit like a sponge, absorbing that water, reducing the amount of impact that our human infrastructure, like the agricultural fields you see in this picture, or the trails and the campsites we've been talking about as we've come up the coast. So if we protect our wetlands, we have the opportunity to protect what we humans have built, but we also have the opportunity to protect the habitats and preserve the biodiversity of these incredible places that we have chosen to protect as our state parks. Now, that photo that Brad showed just before this was a picture of something that we call storm surge. And that's another thing to think about when we're talking about sea level rise. Right now, we're in December, and we're in a La Nina year this year around the world. And that means California isn't getting quite as much rain as we might in just a typical year or even an El Nino year. But when storms come up to the coast, it pushes that water. And if those waves pile up on top of a king tide like this, the flooding and impacts to our land and infrastructure can be even more significant. So we have lots of things to think about when we think about how we interact with our spaces around us. And it's been so amazing to see the tours of these parks, not only to see the impacts that the king tides are having and your opportunities to interact with these spaces over the weekend and coming up in January, but we also are seeing what it means to choose to protect and responsibly manage our places so that these impacts are going to be reduced in the future. Now I'm going to hand it back over to Erica as we transition to a few more places along our coast.
Well, here's the really cool thing. We've been checking out other sections of our coastline over the last, 45 minutes. But we are here now at Point Lobos State Natural Reserve. Right now, this very moment, at I think it was 8:48, we had our peak high tide for today. Now, king tides are coming on the 4th and 5th this weekend, so the water will be even higher than it is now, even though right now it is washing into our parking lot as we stand here. Now, we are going to talk a little bit more about this park, and I'd like to invite my colleague, Isabella. Isabella is another MPA interpreter here in Point Lobos. And why don't you share what's going on with your park?
Okay, I'd love to. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Point Lobos State Natural Reserve, and right behind me, Point Lobos State Marine Reserve. I'm here with Erica and Sarah May on the central coast of California. We're about a few miles south of Carmel and a little bit south of Monterey. Point Lobos is the crown jewel of the California State Park system. It is one of the most highly visited parks in the system. It attracts over 600,000 visitors a year, and for good reason. Point Lobos is home to rocky headlands, sandy beaches, tide pools, kelp forests, cypress and pine forests, and more. And not only does it have this amazing natural history and this variety of habitats, it also has a lot of really cool historic and cultural resources. Today, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about how king tides and sea level rise are what we're going to use to predict how Point Lobos will be affected by sea level rise. So it's important to remember that king tides are expected and a natural event, and we can use them to predict what sea level rise will look like in parks and along the coast. During low tide, king tide is an amazing way to access tide pools and go really far offshore. And during these high tides, we can use it as this lens to predict sea level rise. Point Lobos has roads that go through the park. So people are able to drive into the park, which is an especially equitable and convenient option for people who are physically not able to walk these far distances. When people drive into the park, they can access hikes, scenic lookouts. There's even a museum that's up the road from us right now. And right behind me, there is this concrete ramp. And this ramp is used by scuba divers to enter the water. It's also used as a boat launch. And as you can see, water is starting to creep up the ramp and get into the parking lot. For some of the roads and parking lots that are in Point Lobos, we are expecting that sea level rise will really start to reduce the accessibility of these parts of the park. We are predicting that the hikes and roads will really be impacted by these rising tides, and people will have some more difficulty entering the park and being able to access all the beautiful trails and lookouts here. Just in this part of the park here in Whalers Cove, people can access multiple different trails and access that museum that's up the road. In addition to impacts to these coastal roads and trails, I was able to talk to a longtime lifeguard in Monterey County who has already noticed lots of impacts from sea level rise to the physical infrastructure in the county. He was seeing that beachfront hotels, piers, jetties, and other things were starting to be eroded by these rising sea levels, and sometimes they were not accessible at all during these high tides. The lifeguard also mentioned the safety concerns that happen when there are these really high tides, like during the king tide event. When the water is rising so much, there's lots of movement going on. It causes stronger rip currents, and this can pose a really big danger to people who are using the coastline or in the water. So if you are thinking about coming out this weekend, please practice awareness and keep being aware of your surroundings as you're along the coast. With that, I will wrap it up and pass it back to Erica. Happy King Tide weekend, and thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, Isabella. Yeah. Now, I know that you're going to be out at another state beach this weekend.
I will.
And we were talking a little bit about the opportunity to do some tide pooling, which is so exciting. Tide pooling during king tides is amazing because you can get further in the intertidal. And what type of intertidal animals do you generally see in this section of the coastline?
That's a great question, Erica. So out in the king tides for these low tides this weekend, you will be able to go really far off the beach. You'll be able to see animals like sea stars, sea urchins, lots of different types of crabs, mollusks, lots of crustaceans. So it'll be really exciting to see all the different types of life out there this weekend.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to getting out and doing some
Me
tide pools.
too.
But as Isabella mentioned, it is really important to stay safe when you're out exploring your coastline, whether you are out looking at your high water levels and taking photos for the King Tides project, or whether you're going out tide pooling, just remembering to keep your ocean safety in mind. Don't turn your back on the ocean, and be aware that the tides are changing dramatically this weekend. So thank you so much, Isabella.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
It's really great checking in here at Point Lobos. And as you can see, we've got a lot of traffic coming down this road. And this is the case for not only a lot of coastal California state parks, but also many other towns and cities along our coastline that do have infrastructure like roads and parking lots right next to the ocean. And with that, you know, we've got high water coming into this parking lot. Point Lobos is considered the jewel of California state parks. It's one of our most popular locations. And in the case of a flooded parking lot, it does reduce the ability for a lot of people to access trails, especially in this part of the park. And of course, yeah, I see a comment from Jen. Safety first is really important as you all are getting out into your parks and your coastlines this weekend to observe the King Tides. So we are going to take a quick break, have a look at a short video, and we're heading further up the coastline to Santa Cruz next. All right. Hello. We are here. Good morning. We see Ashley and Leslie. You are there in Santa Cruz County at Sea Cliff State Beach. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please feel free to share what's happening at Sea Cliff today.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Ashley and this is Leslie. And like Erica said, we are here at Sea Cliff State Beach and we're on our walkway. And if we look right behind us, you can see our cement ship behind us. And there's also this large channel. And since we've been out here, people that have been walking are having to jump across this channel. So I'm going to pass it to Leslie.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for this King Tides live stream event. And today, Ashley and I are going to be sharing with you some of the ways that sea level rise and climate change will be affecting us here in Santa Cruz. And one of the things that we've been noticing is that each winter with these larger storms that we've been experiencing, we need to evacuate our campgrounds more often. These higher waves, stronger storms, and storm surges are pushing into the campsites themselves, as well as up onto the campground roads. With these storm surge, we often get these logs that you can see behind us rolling around in the campground themselves. There's also lots of debris and dirt. So it's a huge cleanup process every time that we experience a storm surge or a winter storm here. Now, when we have to evacuate our campgrounds, the day use parking lot up above us, up above the visitor center, becomes the campground. And unfortunately, for people that are here to enjoy the walkway on the beach, that severely limits their access to this particular park. Now, climate change and sea level rise will severely impact our coastal campgrounds and our beaches and the way that people will be able to recreate there. And today, having a chance to stand here on the beach and show you what the future might look like here at Sea Cliff State Beach is an opportunity that we're grateful to have. Now, even though rising sea level paired with stronger storms will affect the way people recreate here in our campground, California State Parks is already making plans to mitigate and address the effects of climate change. They're making sure that we continue to be able to recreate here, that our community can come here safely and enjoy these coasts. And also, at the same time, they are making sure that they are taking care of and managing our cultural and natural resources. At this time, we do have an image of our campground at low tide and the beach as well. You can see that is an image of the ship. And the campground is actually to my left, just beyond this fence line behind me here. So I'm going to try and move my camera so that we can get a closer look up the coast. Thank you for helping us zoom in there. And you can see that that water is already almost up to this fence line here down towards the campground. You can kind of see people walking in the distance. That is where those campsites are located. And as Ashley mentioned earlier, we have this channel here that's already being inundated with some of that water that's coming up onto the beaches here. Now, our high tide is just in the process of starting. So the water level will get higher throughout this king tide event. And that's also going to affect our historic landmark, this ship that you're looking at. And Ashley is going to spend some time talking to you about how sea level rise and climate change will affect some of our cultural resources like this ship.
Thank you, Leslie. So right behind us is our cement ship called the Ss Palo Alto. And just to give you a brief history lesson about this ship, it is made out of concrete, that same material that we are walking along our roads. And this ship was originally meant to be used in World War I as an oil tanker. But unfortunately, the war ended before it was ever able to be used. And so it sat up in Oakland for about 10 years. Nobody knew what to do with the concrete ship. And so it was brought down here to Seacliff and people turned it into a party ship. And so there was a restaurant, a ballroom for dancing, a swimming pool, and it became the central hangout spot. And the pier was built out to it. But all of this was happening during the Great Depression, so it only lasted as a party ship for just 2 years. And ever since then, it's been slowly breaking down because there's a problem with the ship. It is sitting on the bottom of the ocean. So when you're out on the ocean and you're on a boat, you can rock back and forth with waves. But when there's a big winter storm that comes through here, we get massive waves. And this ship cannot rock, so it is acting like a brick wall. And it is getting broken down into several pieces. Right now it is in 3 pieces. And you might be thinking, why is there still this big broken ship here? And it's because it's become a habitat for a bunch of animals, both on top of the ship and underwater. And so you can see in this low tide photo how the water is only about halfway up the ship, but right now the water level is almost coming up to the top of the deck. And on the deck are these birds called cormorants, and they're these little black birds that hunt for fish, and they build their nests out on the ship. And so when there's a high tide and big winter storms, large waves come over the top of the deck and the birds are required to find somewhere else. So as the water level continues to rise, these birds may have to find a new place to live. And so the vast majority of people that live in California live along the coastline. And so it is going to take communities coming together to come up with solutions to combat these effects. And so you can encourage your local government officials to make sea level rise a priority in planning efforts. And you can also be ready to evacuate and be ready for any possible emergencies. So with that, the tide here at Seacliff is going to get higher this weekend. Also, there are going to be great low tides. So just north of us here at Seacliff is New Brighton State Beach. And if you are looking to do a great low tide walk, you can walk along the cliffs from New Brighton all the way to Capitola. And there are some great tide pools, and you can even see some fossils. So with that, thank you for joining us here at Sea Cliff, and we're going to pass it back to Erica.
All right, that was a great look at Sea Cliff State Beach. Thank you, Ashley and Leslie. And just a great reminder of how we have a lot of history and culture along the California coastline, that as sea level rises, we will start to lose those things, like that old concrete party ship, that shipwreck that you can see there from the shoreline of Sea Cliff. Now, as we move into our next segment, I'm really excited to introduce two very important people. Many of you who have visited California State Parks, you may have met California State Parks lifeguards. We just saw one of them there on screen. We've got Eric Bergen with us. Hello, Eric, as well as Tim Harvey. Hello, gentlemen. So these men are two California State Parks lifeguards who have worked long careers helping protect state park visitors along our shorelines. And we wanted to invite them here today to have a brief conversation about the things that they have observed during their time living and recreating and working along the California coast. Now, before we get started, I want to do some quick introductions. So, Tim, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're
Wave
good.
your hands if you can hear me. Oh, good. Yeah, no, hi, I'm Tim Harvey. I run the Mendocino Coast Junior Lifeguard Program. I'm a coordinator there. And I started lifeguarding back in 1972 for the state parks down in Southern California. And so I've been lucky to be able to see all these different parks and what's happened over the years. Unlucky in some ways, but lucky in others.
Well, that's awesome, Tim. And I know that you mentioned to me earlier that you had grown up doing some surfing as a young man at San Olejo State Beach, which is where Eric is standing right now. So you grew up surfing at the beach where Eric is working. Good morning, Eric. Would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself? I cannot hear you. Maybe Taylor or Sandy can help you with your audio really quick. I think that Eric can hear us, but we are not able to hear Eric. So we're going to pause for just a moment while we work on connecting Eric's mic. So Tim, can you just share a little bit about what your experience was like as a young man surfing at San Olejo State Beach, and let us know how San Olejo State Beach has changed a little bit?
Yeah, when I was a kid, even before I started lifeguarding, we all, I was stationed or lived in San Clemente, and so we would surf, Trestles was closed. So we would go and surf all the breaks in San Diego regularly, and like San Clemente and a lot of the beaches, even north of there was always a lot of sand. There was never a big issue. And over the years, I've sort of seen, even though there's always an influx of sand in the winter, or out, the sand gets dredged out in the winter, and then it comes back in the summer when the south swells hit. There's always that natural sort of fluctuation. But slowly, but surely, beaches that were 100 yards out or 75 yards long, out to the breaks, now are like where you're standing now. There's not a beach at all, and that happened. I've seen that happen now in the summers. In the summers, there's no beach, where normally, when we have sand coming back in, that there's beaches. So it was a lot different, and I noticed it. I notice it now more than then, but there's a big difference now.
Yeah, there are certainly observations that can only be made over time, and you both have a lifetime experience of being surfers and being out on the coastline, and then also being there working along the coastline. I do want to do a quick check with Eric. Do we have your audio back yet, Eric? Can I hear? It doesn't sound like we're able to hear him yet, so we'll continue to have a chat with you, Tim. I do recognize, you know, especially in Southern California with those big, broad, sandy beaches, that we are seeing them disappear and get smaller in size, and a lot of that has to do with sea level rise. So it's pretty incredible that you've been able to witness that during your time recreating and working there. Now, Eric, are we able to try your audio again? Can we have a check 1, 2? All right. So we'll take Eric off screen. I know Eric's team is working to get his audio sorted out. So Tim, I'm just going to check in with you. You had also shared some stories about different campgrounds further up north, closer to LA and the Channel Coast, and how those campgrounds have changed places that you had gone as a young man.
Right. I ran the junior lifeguard program at Leo Carrillo for a number of years. And as a kid going up there, we would camp. We could camp at North Beach at Leo Carrillo. There was a big campground there. I mean, there was 100 yards of beach there. There was a whole campground. Now there's a parking lot. That's all that's left. You know, the surf comes right up to the parking lot. Again, similar to where you are right now, which is really dramatic. There was actually dunes. There's a surf break there called Heavens, and there was dunes, you know, with grass, you know, dune grass on it, and it was just completely different, you know. And so that all has sort of disappeared. You know, those campsites are gone. There was probably 40 campsites there, and that's it. You know, that's all gone, and that's just noticeable in my short life. You know, San Clemente. I worked in San Clemente for a while. The beaches there are, even in the summer now, there's, you know, 15, 20 yards of beach. You know, water comes up over the railroad tracks regularly.
Wow.
You know, the trains now are in jeopardy, even going down towards San Diego because of the undercutting in the cliffs, and you know, it's dramatic. It's a lot different than it was.
Loss of recreation opportunities is a big one. So I heard you mention too how a surf break that used to be there is gone. And I know that that's one of Californians' favorite pastimes, is getting out and surfing our shorelines. There are so many incredible breaks. And as sea level rise increases, those breaks are going to change and may disappear. And of course, some may be created in other places, but the coastline is certainly changing. Eric, are we able to hear you? I'm sorry, we're still not able to hear you, Eric. I apologize for that. We're going to take you off screen for a second and let your team continue. We'll try back with Eric in a minute. Another thing that you had mentioned, Tim, you had mentioned about the train tracks getting undercut and also overrun by these high water events. Now, of course, as we've been discussing throughout this program, king tides are naturally occurring. They are tides that are driven by the alignment of the moon and the sun, giving that good gravitational pull to create these really high water marks and low water marks. Now, the thing with that, though, is it's an indicator for sea level rise. And so we're able to see into our future. And if we're looking at train tracks that are so close to a shoreline that at these high water marks, they are being inundated and washed over, that obviously limits transportation and also the movement of goods. One of our recent things in world news is supply chain and how difficult it is to currently move a lot of products from one place to another because of such high demands. And so if you look like how trains are responsible for transporting items up and down, cargo and freight up and down the California coast, if a train track has to shut down because of a high level or high water level occurrence, that can really prevent resources and products from getting from one place to another. So that's amazing that you've been able to say that. And you said you saw that at San Clemente occur in
San Clemente, yeah, at Cotton's Point. And it would happen on king tides. It's one thing because it's king tides, right? But if you start seeing water coming up over the tracks on a big south swell, you know, in the early fall, or even in the summer when there aren't as many king tides, that's even more of an indicator that, you know, something's up. You know, this time of year, king tides, you know, have always been quite dramatic because they're king tides. You know, it's amazing. But now the king tides are up, 25, 30 yards up the beach to what they used to be.
Exactly.
And so
because
that,
of
you're right,
that
that does
sea level rise.
affect, and I would say too that, in running the junior lifeguard programs, like we are here with our backs to the water, like you never do that. Like, no, that's the first lesson of going to the beach is like, you never turn your back on the ocean, like there's a lot of safety factors that come with that high tide anytime during the year now. There's a lot of safety issues. There's less beach, there's more people, there's less place to go. During high tides, the rip tides are, of course, raging, particularly during swells. So all up and down the coast, it's a lot less safe than it was. There's less places for people to go and more people trying to get to those places. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you've got a beach that's filled with a lot of people who are currently not doing a lot of travel out of state or internationally, and instead they're enjoying California's local coastlines, you have that larger population going into these areas where the beaches are being reduced. There's less space for them. And then, of course, that probably does a little bit of impact for you on your ability to access different sections of the coastline if you need to perform a rescue, I would imagine.
Absolutely. There's less and less beach driving, if any, now. Now you're up on the roads or you're up on the cliff and you have to scamper down the cliff and jump in there. It's changed life-saving, particularly up here on the North Coast, a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to check in with Eric one more time. Do we have audio from Eric? And I still cannot hear you. I'm so sorry, Eric. We were really looking forward to having a conversation with you from there at San Olejo State Beach. We are going to say goodbye to Eric and continue to chat with Tim. I apologize that we weren't able to hear Eric's perspective because much like Tim, he has a career both working as a lifeguard, but he joined junior guards as an 11 or 12-year-old kid, and that's where his passion for lifeguarding began, was our friend Tim Harvey. Now, our friend Eric Brigham. Now, Tim, I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about the things that you train the junior lifeguards to do when they're thinking about ocean safety. We are, of course, encouraging a lot of folks to go out to our shoreline this weekend to not only observe these high water events, but to also participate in the King Tides project and actually take photos of these events and contribute them to our community science project. So when folks are going out to the shoreline this weekend, can you share with them similar things that you're teaching the junior guards about that very basic ocean safety that people should be aware of when they're on the shoreline?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, we always tell the kids when you get to a beach, particularly ones that aren't your local beaches, that you observe the conditions. You just stop, get on, at high ground somewhere where you're safe and far away, but you watch what's going on. You see what the surf size is. You see the potential hazards. We teach the kids about riptides and rocks and all those things. So just to stop and observe, waves come in sets. So you can walk up to a beach and it can be completely calm, and then you go, oh, I'm going to go down and touch the water. And at about that time, huge set of waves comes and just mows you down, So you need to give yourself time to check out the conditions and find out where the hazards are and what can actually, where you can get hurt. That's also in low tide. Low tide, if you're out and, walking around where there's a bunch of kelp, the rocks are slippery, you're going down, so you have to be aware of that. You have to, pay attention to what the conditions are, and that'll dictate what you can do. But the first thing we always teach the kids and everybody is just don't turn your back on the ocean. That ocean is just waiting, and don't give it a chance to swipe you off your feet. And we teach them never to go in and we train them to become physically fit and to be able to handle themselves in the ocean. But with that comes a understanding of what your abilities are. So there's no reason to go out and try to prove something. Know what your abilities are, know what you can handle, And the smarter you are, the more you'll realize, no, I can't handle that. You know, I need to
The
stand
ocean
back.
the ocean is a
It's
very
got a lot
powerful
of power,
force.
super
Yeah,
lot of power. You know.
absolutely. All right, one last check with Eric. Can we hear you? No, we cannot. I am so sorry, Eric. We tried our best. So Eric is standing there, though, in front of a Lifeguard Tower that you can see here at this high water mark is currently inaccessible because it's in the waves. And I was wondering, Kayla, who's backstage there, if you might be able to pan the camera a little bit so we can have a look at the Lifeguard Tower, the new one off to the right. Are you guys able to see it above the bluff there? Ah, there it is. Awesome. So the story here at San Olejo State Beach, which is where Eric is standing right now, is really talking about what we call is planned retreat or managed retreat. We saw with that Lifeguard Tower there, the older one that's down in the water, that one is currently at this high tide event, and with sea level rise is not as easy to use for these lifeguards. And so there at San Olejo State Beach, they have a new Lifeguard Headquarters that they have placed further back from the shoreline and higher up on the bluff to make sure that it can withstand sea level rise in the coming decades. So that is something that we can talk about as an opportunity to really think forward our towns, our communities and cities along the California shoreline as we are developing new infrastructure to do that managed retreat and think about the future and put those really important structures further back from the shoreline. So we're not risking not only the things that we've built, but also the people that work there, like Tim and Eric, who are working as lifeguards. So apologies again that we weren't able to get Eric's volume to work. We are going to take a quick video break. Eric, we'll be seeing you later. Thank you so much for trying. We'll take a quick video break, and then we're going to be checking back at Mendocino Headland State Park in just a moment. Bye, Tim. Thank you.
Cheers.
Oh, I love those videos. Well, hello, Nikki. Nikki, you're there at Mendocino Headland State Park and there at Big River Beach. It's really good to see you. How's everything looking this morning?
Well, good morning. Thank you. It's looking a little overcast, a little windy, but our tides are rolling in. As you can see behind me, we are at Big River State Beach on the estuary side, just east of the bridge. And over here, you're going to see a parking lot that is slowly getting waves breaching into it. And coming this weekend with the coupling of bigger storms, we may have to close this parking lot because it may not be dry enough for you to park in. But this is giving us an awesome glimpse into our future, seeing where the tides could be and on a normal day-to-day basis, not just on natural phenomenon events.
Absolutely. And we're talking about recreation state parks. You can actually see right behind me here, we've got some scuba divers who are going into the water at Point Lobos State Natural Reserve. If you are a recreational scuba diver, you can come and dive in the kelp forest here, which is amazing. And they're using this boat ramp here behind me to get into the water. But while we've been doing this program, water has been washing up into this parking lot. And in the case of these high water events, and as sea level rise continues to increase over the years, there will be points during the high tide events that this parking lot will not be accessible, which means that scuba divers won't be able to get into the water at this site. And this is the one place where they can enter the water in Point Lobos. So similar to what you have going on there, I know you get a lot of recreation in your estuary. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you share your park with us.
Well, thank you, Erica. So yeah, as we were just discussing with all our park systems up and down the coast, 1,100 miles of coastline is going to be affected by the increase in sea level rise and the fact that our ocean is coming into our land, intruding a little bit every year without the help of our climate action to combat this climate crisis. And we're going to have to plan for events where our parking lots are going to be closed. Maybe beaches aren't going to be as accessible. I'll give you a little tour right now. And this doesn't just impact infrastructure and recreation, but it also impacts our marine life, our wildlife that lives here and enjoys this place at multiple times of the year, maybe for a breeding ground, as this is one of our 124 marine protected areas, California State Parks connection, and is Big River Estuary State Marine Conservation Area, where we see Dungeness crab mating, finding a safeguard, a place to call home for different times of the year. And also our harbor seals use the rookery over here in the marine marsh, in the wetlands. And we're gonna see more saltwater intrusion, as we just learned about, which is gonna affect our freshwater ecosystems as well. So maybe many animals will be without home and habitat at different times of the year, where maybe they use this spot as a safeguard, a zone to raise their young, keep them healthy and strong, maybe a little more protected and warm from the ocean conditions that can be rough and wild here on the North Coast. And some of the safety factors we got to think about when we come to the beach and we have these extreme high and low tides are finding out, like our lifeguards told us, to look at the possibilities of what we come here to do, what might be safe, what might not be so safe. And as you guys probably observed on this beach, we have a lot of logs all around the beach. And with king tides, high tides, you're going to see the water sweeping these logs up. They didn't get here naturally. They came down with heavy rainstorms from the rivers, from the forest. And they're up here because this is where the high tide line sits. And this is where they floated to with the water. And these logs will move when the water comes up. And so it's important. So never turn your back on the ocean. Make sure you see what the hazards are. Maybe watch out for VW-sized bus logs coming at you when the waves pick up. So all these things are really important to do and observe when you are coming out to observe our this natural phenomenon, the king tides events, and contributing to citizen-based science and uploading your photos to Erica.
The California King Tides Project. Yeah. And
yes,
Brad can bring that website up on screen. Yeah, it is a really good reminder to stay safe out there, that we really would love to see everyone get out to the coastline and contribute to this community science project, but so important to stay safe. Now, Nikki, I know that you're also in the mouth of an estuary, and we learned a little bit earlier on when we were talking down at Tijuana Estuary, how those can be great buffers for sea level rise, because it allows the land to absorb and take that impact of those rising sea levels. The difference between you up there in Mendocino County and the estuary where you are, and if you can give us a pan around really quick to look at it, you've got a really natural edge. With the exception of the parking lot, you've got a pretty natural edge to your estuary. That's all forest over on the other side, which will allow the river and the estuary to move up into the river. Now, that wasn't the case down in Tijuana Tijuana Estuary. And that isn't the case for a lot of other estuaries in California, especially in the southern part of the state where there's a lot of development. When you put a lot of concrete and asphalt and rocks along the edges of those estuaries, there isn't that ability for them to tamper and help with the rising sea levels. Well, Nikki, thank you so much for sharing our park with us and for helping bring Tim on screen this morning. It was great to have a chance to chat with both of you, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Happy King Tides.
Take care. Okay, so we are going to connect here shortly with Billy Brooks, who is with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and he has helped in the development of NOAA's Sea Level Rise Viewer. He is going to give us a tour of this tool. So good morning, Billy. It's so good to see you. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Well, we had a lot of fun using your tool to examine how sea level rise is impacting the California coastline, but I know that it works for locations around the globe. I would love to see the tour that you have planned for us and to hear a little bit of background on the development of this tool.
Yep, sure thing. So thank you for having me. My name is Billy Brooks, and I work for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Office for Coastal Management. And I'm going to be talking to you today about the NOAA Sea Level Rise Viewer. If you're like me and you are stuck in Charleston, South Carolina, no, I'm kidding. If you're unable to get out to the coast this weekend, either today or this weekend, you can still check out the potential impacts of king tides and also elevated water levels through the NOAA Sea Level Rise viewer. You can access the tool in a web browser. So what's being shared right now is just my Google Chrome tab. You can go to coast.noaa.gov/SLR, or you can just search for NOAA Sea Level Rise viewer, and it should be the first result that pops up. You're probably familiar with NOAA weather forecasts and the NOAA tide stations that are all along the coast. And, you know, at those tide stations, we've been monitoring sea levels for decades. And we know that the sea level is rising, and that even in the past couple of decades, that rate of increase or rise has been accelerating. And so we have this great data to where we monitor water levels and we track information, but we also have some great visualization tools to help you visualize, well, what does it mean that the water level is a certain height? And one of those is our Sea Level Rise viewer. We created this tool a little over 10 years ago to help coastal communities visualize the potential impacts from sea level rise, whether it's to their natural resources or their local infrastructure and critical facilities. We've used the best available elevation data and coastal water level data to map 0 feet up to 10 feet of sea level rise. And so as you can see, this is kind of a home page for the Sea Level Rise viewer. So I'm going to click the big green button, and this is similar to other mapping viewers that you may have interacted with, maybe Google Maps, for example. Up at the top, you can search for your location. You can enter in a local city or town or place or your actual address. And I'm going to type in Tijuana River Valley or Estuary down in San Diego. And you'll see that the tool zooms into that location. And you can notice right off the bat that you're seeing some colors on the map. And really what we're looking for are just the different blues that you might see. And over here on the left, we call it our sea level slider. So you can see that you just grab this little button and you start dragging it up. And what we've done is we've mapped these different water levels out, really for everywhere in the country, but specifically today for the California coastline. And you can see what different water levels will look like. I know that the king tide this weekend is probably going to get up to around 2 feet above kind of the average high tide. And so that's what we're looking at right now. And I think earlier you kind of saw a view of this part of the estuary, and you can start seeing where, you know, in some cases the road gets overtopped by water levels. So you can kind of see the effect that, you know, not only are the natural areas like the marshes impacted, and those marshes really stop right at the edge of development, but you can see where that water starts coming into developed areas and starts impacting accessibility to people's homes. And while different structures may or may not flood, the roads that get to them or the infrastructure might be impacted. Saltwater intrusion into drinking water was mentioned earlier, and that's also a potential impact. I'm going to go to another location. So that is in the estuary. I'm going to go just a little bit north up to Mission Bay, just to give you a sense of the differences between kind of the open coast and then the back bay areas. You know, in a lot of cases, we do have beaches that will protect when you have a combination of, let's say, a high tide and a high wave event or onshore wind flow. But in many cases, and this is true all around the country, a lot of places where we start seeing impacts are actually in these back bays where you have lower elevations and higher water levels. And so as we drag the slider, you can see how as I go up from 2 feet to 3 feet, you really start seeing how these back bay areas, and in this case, residential areas, become impacted. Not everybody is used to looking at a map as though you're up in an airplane. So what we've done is around the coast, we have created what we call our photo simulations. And so because we know where that photo, where the location is that's in the photo, and we know how deep the water is going to be at different water levels, we can actually simulate what would it potentially look like if water levels got that high at that location. And so you can see as we raise the water level up, the water level in the photo actually rises. So let's go to a different location. We're going to go up to Morro Bay, which is one of the locations. And you can see in this estuarine system potential impacts. And you kind of got a view of this earlier in one of the live shots from Morrow Bay. But you can see, as we adjust our sea level slider, you can look and see how the estuary is flooded and how potentially roads might be impacted, cutting off access. And so, parking lots, again, might have to be closed in some cases, depending on how high the tide is going to be, or if there's some combination of a high wave event, like a big south swell with a high tide and onshore wind, that could really impact a local area. Also, lastly, and just to show you again how you can navigate the tool, we're going to go up to San Francisco. And you can see, in the more populated areas, we have more of these visualizations that you can click on. But again, really the goal of this is just simply to grab this slider and to go up and down. And so we're looking at it right now on a computer in a web browser, but the tool will actually also work on your mobile device. So it should resize and actually be usable on a phone, which I especially enjoy because sometimes I'm out along the coast and I want to see what potential impacts are. So I'll pull out my phone and start moving the slider up and down. One last thing to mention, if you are interested in more detailed information, you actually can click on this little information icon that provides some more context. And we also have different sections of the tool to where we look at high tide flooding. We look at how vulnerable populations might be impacted along the coast. We also look at how marshes might migrate in response to sea level and if they have the space to migrate, depending on what development looks like for an area. So that is all I have. I'm glad and just thankful to be able to present this to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Billy. We have had the website up on screen, but if you could tell us the website one more time for people to access your sea level rise viewer, what is the address?
Yep, it is coast.noaa.gov/SLR.
For sea level rise. Well, Billy, we are so appreciative of you being here to spend some time with us today. Thank you and your team at NOAA's Digital Coast for creating this amazing tool that Californians can use. Educators, I know that we have a lot of teachers and students joining our program. It's a really great way to explore your local coastline or even your favorite place that you like to vacation and see how it is impacted by the rising sea level. So Billy, thank you so much. We are going to wrap up our program now, and we will chat with you soon. I do want to thank you all for joining us today as we've explored the California coastline, observing the beginning of this season's king tides. Do get out on your coast this Saturday and Sunday to see your high water level events. These king tides are great predictors for sea level rise and the future of California's changing coastline. When you're out there, remember to stay safe along the coastline. Remember safety first. Also, if you've got a smartphone or a tablet or a camera with you, take photos of those high tide events and you can submit them to the California Coastal Commission's community science project called the King Tides Project. So you can submit your photos, be part of this really big statewide effort to collect this data. So in addition to being safe out there, in addition to contributing to community science, the other thing that you can be thinking about is reducing your impacts on our environment and helping slow climate change. Because of course, that is one of the drivers of sea level rise. The things that you can do to help protect your coastline include protecting healthy habitats along the shorelines. Here at Point Lobos, we have a thriving kelp forest that it's protected. We have lots of estuaries that need protection. Those things help buffer the impacts of these storm surges, especially when there is sea level rise involved. You can look at different ways you can cut your carbon emissions. That can be like driving less and walking and biking more, using less energy in your home or business and switching to renewables like solar or wind. You can also think about using less plastic. And a lot of people don't make this connection. They think plastic pollution as just being, okay, that's bad for the ocean because it's trash. But a lot of people don't understand that plastic is made from fossil fuels. So the extraction of of oil from the ground to produce our plastics. Creation of plastics is very energy intensive and creates more emissions. And then of course, those plastics that get thrown away and end up our environment, it's a double whammy. So lots of different things that you can help to do to protect our global ocean, as well as help reduce climate change and the resulting sea level rise. Thank you all so much for being with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. We hope you enjoyed yourselves. It looks like we've got a couple other parks still on the call. We've got Morro Bay and Crystal Cove and Tijuana Estuary, San Olejo State Beach, Gabiota. Thank you all so much. Billy's still with us. It's been great, guys. And enjoy your king tides.
Clapper clapperine.
What was that, Amber?
The ridgeway rail. It's our endangered species. They were clappering. They used to be called clapperils.
Oh, is that what you're hearing right now?
They're saying goodbye too.
Okay. The wildlife is saying goodbye. All our state parks interpreters are saying goodbye. It's been a joy. Happy King Tides, everyone. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.